Hello and welcome to part 2 of my journey taking narrowboat Gentian from Beeston Marina over to Mercia Marina as part of its much larger trip from Lincoln down to the Midlands. At the end of the last video, I was approaching the start of the Trent and Mersey Canal at Derwent Mouth, coming off the River Trent, so that's where we pick things up today. I locked through onto the canal alongside another boat, which it turns out I knew from Instagram, so hello again to narrowboat Tiller Girl. From here on in, I'd be back on the canals for the rest of my trip, no more rivers. And though I do enjoy the space you get on the rivers, the slower pace on the canals and all the lovely narrowboats were both very welcome, despite the much more width-challenged waterways. Believe it or not, this is still a wide beam canal, supposedly, yes, even under this bridge. Bridge number 1, you note. This is the very start of the Trent and Mersey Canal, which runs for 93 miles up to the Bridgewater Canal, which then links it to Liverpool. I joked in the last video how I could smell the canals, but in reality any smell around here is from a sewage treatment plant. Just after that is Chapel Farm Marina. Unfortunately, an issue had arisen. There is one small hiccup, I'll call it, not a problem, but a hiccup, in that now on the canal I'm just about to go through Shardlow, and then I turned the page in my map book only to realise it actually says continued in map book 3 and 4, and this is map book 7. Do I have map book 3 or 4? No. Did I used to own them when I was on my old boat? Oh yes. So I hadn't given it a second thought. But of course, I don't own those map books anymore. I mean, okay, it's a canal, you can pretty much just go one way or the other, but I like to see what's coming. Anyway, it'll be a little voyage of discovery. Incidentally, you can see that I haven't quite got out of river mode by the speed I'm going here, and past moored boats too. Shame on me. I'm supposed to be at tickover, but after the giddy thrills of 6 miles an hour on the Trent, this felt very slow. There's a floodlock here, and moored just beside it, one of my favourite small boats, a Wilderness Beaver. I made a whole video about these. I've left a link in the video description. You come into the village of Shardlow next. They have a great canal festival here each year. Look at this garden. There's a model railway line snaking through the grass. How fantastic is that? Round this slightly blind bend and you come to 2 popular pubs with plenty of mooring for boats. I was of course delighted to see another sea otter tied up there. Past the wharf, and I'm still going too fast, aren't I? Don't come at me in the comments. I just needed to reset after being on the river for so long. Under a busy road brings you to a basin with a heritage centre, which is behind the trees on the right, and another pub. Next to the pub is a lock, and I could see it had 2 boats coming down. Good news, since that meant the lock would be set my way when they came out, and they'd leave the gates open for me then as well. Being single-handed, double-width locks are hard work, as you have to run around to deal with the gates on both sides. I'd forgotten quite how unfit I was until I had to do this again. Look how tiny my boat is in the lock. Having scampered round to the other side, I could close the second lower gate. It was quite heavy, as they often are. Time to let in some water from the top, using the ground paddle to start. Since all the river locks have been operated for me, I took this very cautiously, as I was still very much getting used to how gentian behaves when the water starts swirling in. Once the lock was half full, I opened the gate paddles for a bit of extra flow. This sends quite the dramatic whoosh of water in, and is also best done carefully. As you can see, gentian was being pushed across by the flow. When single-handed and using a centre line to hold the boat, it's crucial you ensure there's enough slack not to hold the boat down as the level rises, else it could tip sideways and take on water. Meanwhile, I'd had some good news about a potential obstruction further along the canal.
The boaters coming through this lock before me tell me that the tree which was blocking the navigation is in fact passable. That is good news. I thought my journey was going to be completely disrupted, but no, good news, it's all go to Murcia Marina.
Having only the weekend available to move the boat, getting stuck would have been a bit of a crisis, so this was a huge relief. There hadn't been a vast amount of wildlife on the river, so here's another benefit to canal travels. Plenty of young furry families to see. It wasn't long until the next lock came into view. I'd moored here coming the other way once, a nice spot. But after the effort of doing the last lock, I had a cunning plan.
Two things about this lock. Firstly, it is a double lock, and the CRT do ask that even if you're a narrow boat going into double lock, you open both gates. But as a solo boater, that's actually quite hard work. The gates are very heavy, and I used to religiously open both on my old boat. But this new one is very little and very light. It's made of aluminium. It doesn't weigh anything. It's not like I'm going to be ramming the gates with a solid steel narrowboat. I reckon if I hit the gates would do more damage to my boat than the other way around. So I am, don't tell anyone, going to just open one gate and go very gently in. The other thing about it is there are no steps up the side because there's a bridge before it, so you can't walk up the steps as I would normally do on a wide lock, taking a rope with me. So I'm going to have to do my usual clamber out up the ladder with the rope.
This all worked splendidly well. One of the joys of canal boating is the locks, because if you're not already travelling slowly, they really do force you to relax and calm down, because you just can't really hurry the filling process. It makes no sense to rush it. Just sit and enjoy the peace. Lock done, I set off again. There was a bit of ominous weather looming. Are these big cabbages? They look like cabbages. But why would the Canal and River Trust grow cabbages on the towpath? It's a mystery. And further along, they become giant cabbages. Maybe there are giant bunny rabbits who live around here and eat them. Or are they baby triffids? Answers to this in the comments, please. Isn't that pretty? Apart from the pylon growing out of its head, obviously. They're horribly ugly things, pylons. This was filmed at the end of May, when we'd had a mix of sunny and wet weather, and the vegetation was loving it. Sheep's Bottoms, charming. I was approaching Weston Lock, and with the time approaching 5 in the afternoon, I was hoping to stop for the evening around here. If you peer closely, you can see through the slit in the gates that the lock is empty. That means all I needed to do was open the gates and go straight in. As I aimed for the lock landing, the hefty overflow push needed to be compensated for. There's a water point above the lock, and then there were hordes of boats moored up, which I thought put paid to my plan to stop here. Although, being in a tiny boat, I can fit in spaces where others wouldn't, but I don't like overhanging trees as you get muck on the roof, so I carried on. At the end of the line, a boat I know slightly, and what do you know, there was space behind it. So I took my opportunity and moored here for the evening, which was very pleasant. By crikey, this was lovely to wake up to. Canals are just the best. I'm not a fan of porridge, but these just add water pots are easy to take on the boat, so, fortified for the day, I began my Sunday travels.
And we're off on a gloriously sunny but somewhat windy or gusty day. 3 hours, I reckon, from here to Murcia Marina. And 2 locks.
What is it with all the animals showing me their bums round here? Did I offend in some way? I've always quite fancied turning a narrowboat into a radio station, but maybe this person's beaten me to it. Look at those aerials! Is this the Ross Revenge? The sights and sounds were all just magical. I was loving being back on the canals. There's a warning sign behind this boat. Hang on, we'll read it in a minute. OK, keep right due to a rocky underwater shelf. Best hope there's no one coming the other way, as they'll be over on my side. But of course, there was. With my tiny 26-foot narrowboat, I now laugh at those who need winding holes to turn around. I can pirouette anywhere. Aha! He did get out of the way. They always do. That's a distance marker, 87 miles to Preston Brook, where this canal ends. It was surprisingly windy, and occasionally I'd feel it push the boat sideways, one drawback of a small aluminium craft. I don't know why these old work barges sit rusting half submerged. You see quite a few of them, but the wildlife likes them. I recalled from a trip here several years ago, there's a lock around here somewhere. Ah yes, there it is, Swarkstone Lock. It's a deep one, and I was extremely fortunate to encounter a group of narrowboats travelling in convoy going the other way, whose crews kindly dealt with all the lock operations for me. They'd been down in London as part of a flotilla campaigning for more money for the canals and rivers, an admirable goal. As you emerge from the lock, there's a stub of canal which forms the end of the Derby route, which is under restoration. One day this will link to the Erewash Canal, I believe, the other end of which I showed in the last video. On past the CRT yard and facilities, you can dispose of rubbish here and fill up with water. It's open countryside all the way to Mercia Marina from here, and I was only 4.5 miles away, so about an hour and a half in canal boat terms. I think I'll just let things play out for a second or two. Yikes, that's alarming, both for cars and canal boats. Fortunately, none of the cars passing that day fancied testing their wading depths. I like how the rain lines up with my route. Sometimes I'd swear I'm a sim with a vindictive controller playing a game of tease. I have lost my bearings. Which power station is that? Ragley Boat Stop is a pub in the middle of nowhere which does more to encourage boater visits than any I've ever seen. It's got moorings with electricity and water which you can stop at overnight. One day, when I'm not in a hurry, I will pause here and see what it's like. I had to crack on though, as I needed not only to get to Mercia, but then get public transport back to my car at Beeston, which on a Sunday could take a while, so no time to dawdle. Maybe this was the tree I'd been warned about earlier that had been blocking the canal. There was just enough space now to squeeze by. You could sit on that and pretend to be a garden gnome. Maybe that's just me. Oh look, fluffy swanlings, barely more than a mouthful each. I think this is Stenson Lock just coming into view, And it's a really deep one, over 12 feet, the second deepest lock on the canal, but also the last of the double width ones. The canal is narrow beam only by the next lock. There is what looks like a winding hole, but appears to be a small mooring basin just below the lock.
Rather handily, for what will be my last lock of the day, there are volunteer lock keepers on, and that is particularly good because this is a very deep lock with quite a flow on it. They're just putting at least one other boat down first, so I'm just going to wait while that one comes through, and then I will be in. I've pointed out I'm a very small and lightweight boat that needs gentle handling, so hopefully they'll be careful with the paddles. The other annoying thing I've just noticed is I've already lost my brand new fender that I bought just yesterday. It is my own stupid fault. I didn't actually tie it on to the line properly. I just did a makeshift knot, and it's clearly come off in one of the locks or something. Anyway, it's now at the bottom of the canal.
This is poor form on my part, because if that gets sucked up by someone else's propeller, they're going to have a bad day getting it off. 3 years away from my own boat, I seem to have forgotten some of the basics. It'll all come back in time. Meanwhile, look at that flow. That's what a 12-foot drop does in terms of water pressure, and you can see gentians bobbing around, which justifies my paranoia about tying up carefully when you go to empty a lock, leaving the boat unattended. The other boat emerged slowly. Then it was my turn to enter the Cavern of Terror. Actually, not terrifying at all, as the lockies were very careful not to fill the lock too fast, and it was one of the smoothest ascents I think I've ever had. Out the other side you pass Stenson Marina, where I might have left the boat, but the access and logistics just didn't work out.
I believe it's about half an hour from here to Murcia Marina, so I'm making good time. In fact, what is the time? It's nearly midday, so let's say there by 12:30. Perfect, just in time for lunch.
And if you've watched more than a couple of my videos, you already know what that lunch was going to be. I am, if nothing else, a man of routine and certain preferences. Cows under a tree, does that mean it's going to rain? At least they weren't showing their bottoms. I rather like this boat. It's got style. And their laundry must be doing well in this breeze. Some folk really go to town on their moorings. I like it. How would you decorate yours? Answer in the comments. And here's Murcia Marina, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, canal marina on the entire network. It's set back from the main line, so you have to go along a little arm to get in. Under a bridge, which carries a busy road on which I would catch a bus later. And here we are. Once moored, I went to the marina office to sort out payment and collect a gate key, and then I was off home. Hello, doggy. I've no idea if this was the right spot to choose, but it would do while I went to sort out the admin. That's it for this one. Cheerio.